So we're going to dip into our third topic here. We're going to talk about, okay, we've done our market research. We've seen what the capabilities out there in the marketplace. We've seen what the capabilities of small businesses are. Now let's translate that into our acquisition strategy and how we're going to go forward with our procurement. So we've identified there's a couple different ways. So in the area, FAR 8.405-5 outlines the small business requirements in terms of our policies around small businesses utilization when using the schedules. And in terms of the ordering procedures, it refers you back to the ordering procedures. So it refers you back to 8.405-1, which talks about orders not requiring a statement of work. It refers you to 8.45-2, which talks about, when I have a statement of work, what's the procedures, and then it also talks to you about 8.405-3, which is blanket purchase agreements under the Schedule 4. So when you do an acquisition strategy, you want to take a look at and say, is my order requiring a statement of work, not requiring a statement of work? What are the things am I considering? Am I considering doing a set aside? Am I considering doing the evaluation factor? Am I considering using contractor teaming arrangements? So we're going to get a little bit more into this. When I have an order that's not requiring a statement of work, like I said, there's the orders between the micro purchase threshold and the SAT. The procedure is pretty quick, pretty easy. I can go up onto something like GSA Advantage. I can look at 3 scheduled price lists. I should look, are there small businesses up there? I can, do a best value determination and then go ahead and make my award. If it's over the simplified acquisition threshold, which is $150,000, I have a new requirement based on the National Defense Authorization Act of 2009, something called 863, that says essentially I have to give fair opportunity to all schedule holders under a category. So if I go back to my Schedule 70 example, it would be everybody under Schedule 70 under a certain special item number that's within the scope of my requirement. And I have to give a fair opportunity to them, or I get at least 3 quotes. So the way to go about that is you might want to do, like I said, issue a RFI out there. You may want to post it to eBuy. Even if it's not requiring a statement of work, you can put a description of the supplies or services that you might want to get and go forward and conduct a competition there. And we do have some new functionality in eBuy that allows you now to select that you're doing a set-aside procurement. And when you do that, small businesses are only able to view those opportunities in eBuy. So here it's a little bit slightly different when I'm doing an order that requires a statement of work. When I do an order requiring a statement of work, if it's between the micro purchase threshold, which is $3,000, and the simplified acquisition threshold, which is $100K, I have to give my RFQ to at least 3 schedule holders. It's not required that I get 3 quotes, but I have to give it to at least 3. So if you identify that there's 3 capable small businesses out there that can meet your requirement, you can distribute it to 3, and you've met your competition requirements. If it's over the simplified acquisition threshold, again, generally what I recommend is post it to eBuy. That is the easiest way to meet the competition requirements. Like I said, you won't be flooded with offers, and you can click that button that restricts it to small businesses if you're doing a set aside. So again, here's the ordering procedures exceeding the SAT. So we kind of talked about this before. We talked about, here I can't emphasize enough, I think eBuy is the way to go with this. It's the most easiest way, because one thing I do want to talk about is if you don't do your competition through eBuy over the simplified acquisition threshold, you can go out and say, you know what, I'm only going to go out to 10. And if you go out to 10 but you get less than 3 quotes, guess what? The contracting officer has to do additional documentation and have to do a written determination. But if you go out to eBuy and you get less than 3 quotes, guess what? You can go ahead and make your award, and you don't have to do that written determination. So generally I say use our e-tools. They're there to help you and all of that. I do want to say here that we want to emphasize that set-asides is not the only ability or tool that's available. You can also use the evaluation factor. When you do that, everybody would be able to view that RFQ so that it would be totally visible on eBuy. But again, that's another strategy that can be employed to getting small business utilization. So contracting officers may set aside orders. So your market research can lend to that. A couple things about when you're doing set-aside orders. One, there is the limitation of subcontracting does apply. And what is the limitation of subcontracting? That means generally that the small business needs to do at least 50% of the work. So they can't sub out the entire order. Also, there's some language in there about 8.405. When we implemented 1331, like I said, we did an interim FAR case. And so basically, the Jobs Act 2010 passed, and passed with Section 8, 1331. And basically, the lawmakers gave us a year to enact this. So there was a lot of discussions in the policy-making process of how to implement this effectively. But generally, a decision was made at the senior level policy officials that says, we're going to enact the law quickly and within the statutory deadline of a year. So there was an interim FAR case that went into effect, and basically it didn't have any public comment. And so there is some things going on, and I'll talk about a little bit further about some of the additional clarification that's going to happen to the policy. But one of the things when we wrote that FAR case, and I was actually involved in drafting it, is we talked about when you're doing a set aside, certain program eligibility requirements apply. So what does that mean? Like the eligibility requirements for the 8A program, SBA has certain eligibility requirements in terms of the 8A program. They have certain eligibility requirements in terms of the women-owned small business program. So that's really the intent of the language, to say those program eligibility requirements apply. So there's also the other tool about evaluation factors. And so, what I'd say is a good use of the evaluation factor too is, particularly we talked about the limitation of subcontracting. The other thing I will mention is the non-manufacturer rule applies when you do a set aside. So what does the non-manufacturer rule really mean? It means that when you're doing a set aside, the small business has to be the manufacturer of the product itself. But we have a lot of small business resellers under the Schedules program. We have a ton of resellers that aren't the manufacturer of the product. They may be reselling IT equipment. They may be reselling other types of things. And so generally, if you want to reach small business, my recommendation might be to use the evaluation factor. Because if you use the evaluation factor, the limitations of subcontracting doesn't apply, the non-manufacturer rule doesn't apply, and there's still the potential of getting some of that business to small business. So kind of here we go, we recap our small business strategy here. So generally when you're considering set-asides, you should make sure that you have at least 3 small businesses that are capable of meeting that requirement. That generally comes from the competition requirements of schedules. So we have 2 statutes in play that say you need at least 3 or more, so that's where that comes from. The limitation of subcontracting, it does apply to set-aside orders. Like I spoke about before, the non-manufacturer rule applies when you're doing set-aside orders. And if you can't do a set-aside, I do really recommend that you consider using socioeconomic status as an evaluation factor for award.